Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to episode 41 of Your Ghost Stories. So if you don't follow us on social media, then you won't know that we've just hit over 20,000 downloads, which is incredible. And I've got to say, I'm very proud of that. This podcast is only about 10 months old and it's completely independent, never put any money into adverts or anything like that. So to hit 20,000 downloads is a massive achievement. And I just want to say a big thank you to every single one of you listening.
Woohoo!
What was that? I hear you asking in the background. Backed by popular demand, it's the Samsonizer.
With my glass of wine.
So, yeah, if you didn't listen to a couple of the previous episodes, my girlfriend, my partner, my baby mama
Gets bored downstairs, so joins you for a podcast or two.
basically begging me to come back on.
It's better than watching TV.
Well, the utter crap you watch, yeah, anything's better than that.
That'd keep you company.
So, what are we here to talk about today?
My hometown.
Ooh.
Woo!
And you don't have the funny accent to go with it, so people won't know where that is. So, remember when I first met your dad? I think that's it.
No, I remember this. I had been with you about a month, and he sent me a voice note singing "Happy Birthday." You said he sounded like a proper farmer.
It's a bit like, Happy birthday to
He
you.
really doesn't. He really doesn't.
Yeah, it's not that strong. But...
I'm from Torquay, by the way, in Devon.
Yeah, so we went down there, what was it, over Christmas? Just after Christmas for New Year's. And while we were there, we thought we'd check out a few of the local haunted spots. Because Sammy is luckily a very supportive girlfriend. And although she gets a bit terrified of all things spooky, she likes to come and see these ghostly places with me.
I say a bit terrified. I won't even watch scary films with you. As you pointed out in one of the first episodes, I'm scared of E.T.
You are scared of E.T.
I'm terrified of E.T. and I'm not afraid to admit it. And I bet there's a lot more people out there scared of E.T. They're just afraid to admit it.
I can't really laugh at you seeing as I'm afraid of frogs. That's quite an evil laugh, though. Have you got a frog up your sleeve or something?
Frogs.
Me, I'm terrified of them.
Ribbit.
Ugly creatures.
Ribbit. What, an E.T. isn't ugly?
E.T.'s cute as.
He's not cute. Seriously, I tell people if they went out in their garden and it was pitch black and E.T. comes shuffling towards them, that wouldn't scare you.
Not at all. I remember when we first moved in here and we were sitting on the sofa and we have these big French doors at the back and I terrified you by seriously stating that E.T. was in the garden at the window. And it
wasn't because I thought he was out there. It's just your reaction. You were just winding me up. But, I'm sure I could do the same with you if I said there was a frog outside.
Nah, they're fine as long as they're behind glass. It's the same as E.T. If he's behind glass, he can't harm you.
I'm tapping on the window with that finger that glows. Anyway, we diversed. Diversed? We diversed.
Digress?
Digress? We digress.
Sammy's got a very good habit of making up
using
random
the wrong
words.
word.
Your ghost story. Your ghost story.
So the first place that we went to see in Devon was called Tor Abbey's Spanish Barn. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. And if you want to see it, I'll put some videos up on TikTok and on Instagram Reels. So you can find that at yourghoststoriespodcast. So a little bit of history about Tor Abbey. So the Tor Abbey Tith Barn was built around the 1200s. That's bloody old. And it was used to store taxes paid to the abbey in the form of grain, hay, and other farm produce. Imagine just being able to pay for stuff with hay. For centuries, however, it's been known to locals as the Spanish Barn. So yeah, it's typically called the Tith Barn, but for some reason, everyone knows it as the Spanish Barn. I think I told you that, didn't I? Even though you literally lived about a stone's throw away. That's quite a lofty throw for a stone's
You would
throw.
have to throw that quite far.
Maybe
And I've seen your throw.
Its place in history was secured in 1588 when the Nuestra Señora del Rosario.
You should do that again in a Spanish accent.
When the Nuestra Señora del Rosario. Not as sexy as a typical Spaniard, is it?
No.
I sound like, what's his name? Andale.
Is that the mouse from Looney Tunes?
Something like, what is he from?
Oh no, Andale.
Speedy Mouse. That's not his name, is it?
No.
Let's just call him Speedy Mouse.
Okay.
Speedy Gonzales.
Is it?
Yeah, Looney Tunes, Speedy Gonzales. So, from my understanding, this ship came in, the Spanish ship, and the English captured it and basically made about 400 people prisoners. And if you've seen this place, the Spanish Barn, like I say, go and have a look on TikTok and Instagram. It's absolutely tiny, so to fit 400 people in that room would have been cramped as hell. Anyway, I'm just going to get on with the nitty-gritty of it. So, Tor Abbey has the distinction of not only being Torquay's oldest building, but also being the best surviving medieval monastery in Devon and Cornwall. So it was founded in 1196, which is, by my calculations, bloody old.
Older than me.
Wow, only just.
Cheeky.
Founded in 1196 by 6 canons of the Premonastation order. I have no idea what that means.
I wouldn't have been able to say that word.
Yeah, you'd have had no chance, would you? Or the white canons, if you want to avoid being completely tongue-tied. It grew and prospered until the 15th century. It had become the order's richest abbey in the country. So following its surrender during to the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1530s, it became a private abode. And in 1662, it was acquired by the Carey family, who owned it for almost 3 centuries. And they built a grand Georgian house onto the medieval fabric, creating in the process a truly grand and impressive dwelling. Yeah, it looks amazing from the outside. We didn't get to go check out the other bit, the Tor Abbey bit, but yeah, even the Spanish Barn is just such a cool building, even though it's just literally kind of like a stone barn. And then in 1930, so a bit more recently, the property was purchased by the local authority and turned into an art and gallery museum. As the 21st century approached, surveyors discovered that the building was falling down and repairs were needed on like a colossal scale. So yeah, that's proved to be very expensive, but it's nice to see that the building is still standing. In 2005, there was a renovation project that saw the property close for 3 years. And even when we were there recently, it had scaffolding all around it. So I assume they're still doing some works. But yeah, in the process, more of the medieval monastery came to light with the consequences since its reopening. And many of the older sections of the abbey are for the first time on public view, enabling visitors to explore the very roots of its magnificent foundation. Yeah, I'd really recommend going to check that place out because it does look really cool. And it's just literally just off the main road, off the beach in Torquay. So this is a ghost podcast. So obviously there are ghosts there. Any building with 800 years of history is bound to have a resident or two. And although Tor Abbey goes one better, it doesn't just boast one or two, it has 3. So chronologically speaking, the earliest of its ghosts date back to the 1300s, when an abbot, for reasons that are difficult to ascertain, beheaded a young canon and then attempted to cover up his dastardly deed. So unable to find rest, the headless ghost of the murdered cleric is said to gallop around the grounds on a ghostly mount. I don't know about you, Sammy, but I didn't see no headless horseman. Did you?
No, I was sheltering in the car because it was raining.
Oh yeah, I was just like a lemon filming the outside of it, getting wet. But the Abbey's most famous haunting centres on its magnificent medieval tith barn, which, as we said, is the Spanish barn, which was originally built, like I said, to store taxes, tithes, and the locals paid to the Abbey in the form of crops and other farm produce. Imagine that. Imagine just being able to pay your council tax with a bit of hay.
Oh, what, like, hey, how you doing? Or hey there.
So Sammy is actually a comedian. She's got a comedy podcast. Oh, I'm joking. She wants to have one.
No. Leave the comedy to me.
So yeah, the most famous story from the Spanish barn is aptly called the Spanish Lady. So back in 1588, the year of the Spanish Armada, Sir Francis Drake captured the Spanish flagship Nuestra Señora de Rosario and took 397 crew members prisoner. So, like I said, that little barn is tiny, so getting 397 people in there is absolutely mental. And amongst them was the fiancé of one of the ship's lieutenants, who, realising that capture was imminent and not wishing to be separated from her lover, disguised herself as a sailor. And along with the other prisoners, she was put ashore and incarcerated for 2 weeks in the barn. And here they were cramped together in miserable conditions, and the young lady pretty much just caught a chill and died. And ever since then, the ghost of the Spanish lady has roamed the barn, apparently, and the surrounding grounds, quietly sobbing to herself as she searches for her lost love.
Oh, that's such a sad ghost
I
story.
know. Fills you with woe, doesn't it?
You feel for her.
Yeah, well, it was a long time ago, so maybe she's got over it.
Maybe. Oh, actually, talking from a woman's point of view, probably not.
And then, last but not least, the final and third phantom, well, that doesn't have a TH in it. The third and final phantom is the smiling apparition of Lady Carey.
Oh, see, that freaks me out there when you say smiling. I think a ghost smiling is creepy. No, not creepy laugh, just smiling, just, oh.
Yeah, I think...
Unless it's obviously a really nice smile, but when you say that, I just envisage like a really creepy smile. Sorry, carry on.
So yeah, she is apparently seen to be walking around in a magnificent ball gown and is said to be driven through the grounds of her old home by an equally spectral driver in a brilliantly illuminated coach.
A ghost coach?
Yeah, a ghost coach. I think the other one was a coach as well, wasn't he? The first one.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention.
So
I
maybe
was drinking
in
my
history,
wine.
it seems to happen that some ghost stories get a bit, mixed up and confused with each other, and then a few different stories come out of them. So maybe this is one of them. But yeah, so should you go there and see a headless cleric galloping by, maybe watch your back, because, yeah.
Oh, when you say driven around, you mean horses, not in a car?
Yeah, no, she's not in like a
car
Ferrari
coach
or anything, or a Lambo.
No, not like, I'm not thinking like a coach, like a bus coach.
No, considering it was back in like the 1500s, I'm pretty sure coaches and buses
Sorry,
didn't
I wasn't
exist.
paying attention.
But yeah, that's the stories of the Spanish barn.
My stories are so much better.
Yeah. It's a small little place, so...
No, it's still cool. It's still haunted barn.
Yeah,
but I'm about to talk about one of England's most haunted castles. And
Ooh.
Sorry, yeah. Ooh. Or is that cue for your ghost stories? Anyway, these stories actually like freak me out. Ugh.
So you had a little bit of experience before we went to, what's it called? Bury Pomeroy Castle, is that right?
Yep.
So before we went, you went before and illegally trespassed.
No, well, you make it sound like it's...
Tell the truth, Sammy.
Yes, yeah, a few... Yes, I jumped over the wall and had a nosy round at dark.
But just
paying the entrance fee.
But just to be clear, like, we went there and the wall's not very big, is it? Like, when you told me this story like a year ago, I could imagine this, like, in my head, I saw this like 10-foot wall.
Yeah, Jamie, I jumped over the wall. I'm 5 foot. How could I get over a 10-foot wall?
Oh, the way you
Yeah, I
described
came
it.
armed with my ladder.
The way you described it, you like scaled this wall of great heights, this castle wall, and you made it over to the other side, and you couldn't get your way back out. But
Well,
then
no,
when I got
that's
there, it's literally
true.
like a wall that I could have just like stepped my legs over.
No, so listen, so it was a very long time ago. Me and some friends thought we'd go for a drive. It was late at night, and we went over to Bury Pomeroy Castle. And we parked up on sort of the side of the road, went for a walk down. And yes, so the bank is quite high, so the wall isn't very high to get over. But when you're on the other side, it's sort of a bit of a drop down. So I remember going over fine and jumping down and looking up thinking, oh, I've got to get back up there. Didn't really think too much of it and had an explore down in the dungeons and everything. To be honest with you, I'm not a believer, so I wasn't spooked or anything. And I hadn't heard any history or stories of Bury Pomeroy Castle. So, and then, yeah, it was funny when we came to leave, I had to get like a leg up and it was a bit more of an effort, let's just say.
There is absolutely no chance you'd have gone there if you knew it was haunted, right?
Well, exactly. And the funny thing is when I got home, my dad or stepmom was still awake, and I remember saying to them that I'd just been to Bury Pomeroy Castle in the dark, and they said, "You do know that's like one of the most haunted castles in England?" And I was like,
Not even just
nope.
castles, like one of the most haunted locations, apparently.
Yeah, first thing I did was Google it, and I'm so glad I didn't read that before going. Well, I wouldn't have gone, basically, if I'd read what I read before going, because I feel like when you've read something, you go with an idea in your head that you're going to see something or it's going to freak you out. And reading these stories online, yeah, I would never go back at night again.
So what's the main kind of ghost story that's meant to be there?
Well, I'll just give you a brief history of Bury Pomeroy for anyone that's interested, just to put it into context for you. Since the Norman conquest of England in the 11th century, people have settled on the land of Bury Pomeroy and its surrounding countryside. The area is rich in history and full of ruins. Bury Pomeroy Castle, the ruins that remain, was started in around 1560 by the Pomeroy even family. So although the castle had soldiers and many fortifications, its position at the top of a steep hill meant that it was never likely to be attacked. From 1600s onwards, ambitious extensions to the property were started. The family wanted the castle to end up as the largest and best stately home in Devon. The extensive building works were never completed, and Bury Pomeroy was completely abandoned by 1700. It was too far from the surrounding towns, too remote to be of any use to anyone. Instead, it has long been the site of teenage... funny
that, isn't it?
Exactly what I got up to. So it's actually a site of teenage initiations. Who can stand being in the castle the longest? Today, Bury Pomeroy Castle is owned and managed by English Heritage.
So yeah, when we went, it's not like this. In the daytime, it was a nice bright blue day and lovely day when we were there. So it wasn't like the spookiest. But I can imagine that at night, I definitely wouldn't want to be there.
It'd be very eerie and different at night, knowing that these haunted stories. So it's actually, reading up on it, there's 4 different ghosts that haunt Bury Pomeroy Castle. Most commonly, you've got the White Lady.
Mm-hmm.
So some backstory of the White Lady. The White Lady is meant to be the ghost of Lady Margaret Pomeroy. The myth tells that her sister Eleanor was a jealous and mean woman. When the man who Eleanor loved went for her sister, Margaret, Eleanor locked Margaret in the dungeon. There, Margaret tragically perished. It's said that unfortunate witnesses can often see her rising out of the dungeon, which is a really damp and somewhat creepy space, and wandering the ramparts. People who claim to have seen her say that she comes accompanied by feelings of depression, uneasiness, and sadness. The next haunting is by the Blue Lady. The story, dating back as far as the 18th century, tells of a lady dressed in blue. She's meant to be a particularly mean and spiteful ghost, even evil. She's meant to be the daughter of one of the Norman knights who inhabited the previous castle on the land where Barry Pomeroy now sits. The story tells that she was forced into an incestuous relationship with her father, resulting in a child. Her father was so angry that he strangled the child.
Well, surely it was his fault. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he should have
Why was he angry?
put a rubber on, shouldn't he?
Well, he shouldn't have done it in the first place. It's her dad.
Well, yeah, and that. Oh, God, that sounds awful, doesn't it? Oh, my God. Delete that.
No, that's staying.
No, that's awful. God. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought. So her father was so angry that he strangled the child. So
Her father was so angry they didn't put a Johnny on.
God, please don't make this funny. It's supposed to be a spooky story, and that's so inappropriate. So in her grief, she died. She is now said to haunt the castle, wandering the empty rooms and luring unexpected men to their deaths. Ooh. So I hadn't heard of the other two hauntings, which are by...
No, we heard of those two when we were there. But
Yeah, the other two are nights. And I've got some really good stories of people that have witnessed things. These, honestly, just... You know when you read...
Give me a quick overview of the Knights and their history. Do you have that?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, cheers.
No, I just want to go straight in with the stories. But
I'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Well, these stories are ones that you read and they just make you not want to go to bed.
Gives you the willies.
Gives you the willies. Exactly. So, a bit of
Meow.
Oh, are you keeping that in?
Yeah.
Oh God, he's found a puzzle piece of about 11 months old, and it's a cat. In case you wondered why the meowing. So I found a really good website with some stories, other ghost stories about Barry Pomeroy Castle.
So these are true stories.
They are true stories. Unfortunately, I can't find the name of whose website this is, but it goes...
If you look at the top, it normally says www.
It doesn't.
Look at the bottom then.
SimonDay.com.
Oh, that was hard, wasn't it?
Thank you, Simon Day, for your website. It was very obvious who that belongs to.
God.
So it reads, my interest for Barry Pomeroy Castle started back in 1987. Woo, when I was born. When I went up there with a group of friends on our motorbikes. I don't think I've ever been as scared. The walk down from the top of the footpath is about half a mile long in the pitch black with trees overhanging on both sides. I absolutely did not believe in ghosts and thought that people claiming to have seen one were probably barking mad. Well, until you see one, you won't believe it. I'm a very mature person and worked for the Devon and Cornwall police as a special constable for 9 years. I don't drink, I don't take drugs, and I am wary of stories by nature. I've only listed the sightings I have seen that have been witnessed by others. I see no point claiming something I've seen alone. One more thing. Once I saw my first ghost, I was addicted to the adrenaline rush it gives me, which is why to this day I still go back. Some people rock climb, others jump out of planes. I go after ghosts to get my rush. The ghostly guard at Barry Pomeroy Castle. My first sighting came a year after my first visit, when 2 of my friends and their dog came over at about 11 p.m. and asked if I wanted to go up there. I grabbed my coat and torch and off we went. We parked at the bottom footpath and started heading up. Their dog was anxious all the way, and as we reached the top, through one of the slit windows, we could see a light as bright as we had ever seen. It was so bright it was lighting up most of the windows inside the main entrance. We thought it might be someone messing about, so we went up to the window. What we faced froze us to the spot. No more than 10 feet in front of us, through this window, was a figure dressed like a guard, and its face stared down at us.
Oh, so maybe that was one of the knights that you were talking about previously.
We could see right through the figure to the wall behind it. It just stared at us.
80% opacity. Transparency.
You're ruining my story.
Sorry.
It just stared at us, moving his head from side to side. No, don't start. No. Yeah, good impression of head bobbing. It seems like ages, but probably no more than a minute later, my friend says, "Let's get out of here. Now." As he said it, the face moved right up against the window and gave a really evil grin, and we could see most of his teeth were missing. We were that close. All this time, their dog was frantic, hair up and barking away from the window.
Sounds like the dog needed a Valium.
Backing away from the window, not barking away. Sorry, I feel like I've ruined that story and it's really spooky. Don't you think it's spooky?
Oh yeah, it's terrifying. Imagine seeing that.
Well, you wouldn't even last that long. You'd be gone at the bright light.
I think if I was in a big group of people, it would be a lot of fun. But if there was just like a couple of us.
Oh, well, that brings me nicely on to the other one, which is called, wait for it, The Night of 20 Witnesses at Bury Pomeroy Castle.
Oh, wow. Go for it.
Oh, give me a second. I just need to get the full story.
1.
Bit longer than that. 1 sec. 2 secs. Deafening screeches and shaking hinges. I first went up with one friend and my dog. I love that it's always a dog, you know. A dog's reaction can never lie. All the way down, we could hear a hair-standing shriek, and my dog was more nervous than I've ever seen him before.
These dogs are clucking for Valium.
I don't get it.
Well, that's what you get. Well, that's what people take if they're nervous and they need, like, if they're going on a flight or they have really bad anxiety. You know, pop a Valium.
Okay, don't ruin this one as well. We had both heard foxes before, but this was way different. We were reluctant to go down and decided to go slow and turn back if the shrieking gets any closer. We got...
Want to hear my impression of a fox?
Not really.
Just in case anyone's not heard of a fox.
Heard of a fox?
I mean, heard a fox cry or make a noise.
Oh, just get it over and done with. I want to finish my story. That sounds like our 11-month-old laugh.
Okay, I can't remember. Where I used to live, there used to be loads of foxes, and they make some horrific noises.
Yeah, doesn't it sound like a baby crying?
Yeah, that's more like
More
it.
like,
Yeah, that's pretty good actually.
Was it? Anyway, you distracted me. So we got down the castle, and this shriek was still on the other side of the field. After only a few minutes, the shriek had stopped from across the field, and in milliseconds was in front of us. My dog went berserk and ran at full speed up the footpath, followed closely by us. As we got to the top, we saw 18 people pulling up in various cars. We told them what had just happened and told them not to go down. They all laughed and said it was a fox. Anyway, after 15 minutes of disputing their claim, they said they were going down and we should come. I spoke to my friend about it, and we were both of the opinion that there is some safety in a group of 20 people, and the noise had stopped, so we went back down with them. When we got down to the bottom, standing in front of St. Margaret's Tower was a glowing figure of an old lady. A dozen of us plucked up the courage to go over there, so we walked up to within a foot of this figure. She didn't speak, but all of us somehow heard her say, "Beware of the hour."
Of the owl?
Hour. I was trying to put on a spooky voice.
Oh, it just made me. I thought owl because when we went there was loads of bird poop all around the main building. Remember, we walked in. There's and I think it said something to do with an owl.
Did it? All right, no. Beware of the hour.
Beware of the owl poop.
Beware of the hour.
What happens on the hour?
Well, the time was 10 minutes to 1 a.m. How would you? 10 minutes to 1 a.m. That doesn't sound quite. Doesn't
10
flow.
10 to 1.
10 to 1 a.m. I want people to know a.m.
Okay. It's early hours of the morning?
Yeah. 50 minutes past midnight. She just stayed there, and by now some of the others were scared, and I admit I was getting worried also. We walked back to the rest of the group, who were by now standing by the entrance to the castle.
So what, they just cracked on even though this glowing woman was there?
Well, they went back.
Did they just think, oh, they're like, she looks great, she's glowing? Is that the kind of glowing?
Yeah, like if you're glowing, but that's like, I think if you're pregnant, people say, oh, you're glowing.
Yeah. So she wasn't like luminous ray of white.
Maybe.
She just looked great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, we were all looking at our watches. You made me lose my train of thought. You're ruining my story. We were all looking at our watches and it struck 1 a.m. The woman vanished and this shriek was back. But this time it was deafening, and I really mean deafening. As it started, the solid 15-foot wooden gate in front of us started shaking so violently we thought it was going to break free. A dozen torches shining on a wooden gate shaking off its hinges without any person near it was enough for 20 of us to run back as fast as we could. We were definitely not welcome there that night.
Damn, girl. That's pretty scary.
It was scary.
Yeah, I can't say I'd
Very
like to see.
scary.
Can't say I'd like to see anything like that whilst.
Just imagine the first story I said about the knight staring back at you with an evil grin with hardly any teeth, and then this happening. If you're actually there experiencing that, that's no, thank you.
I'd probably see the glow and I'd be like, "Oh, hey, girl, you glowing, girl."
You would not. You'd scream like a girl. I've said boo to you and you've come out the bathroom and your feet have physically left the floor.
Yeah, you're a bully.
Not really. I went boo and you went ah! I do have another one.
Go on, one more.
One more?
Yeah, it's getting late and my eyes are getting heavy.
Isabel, the child of Barry Pomeroy. This one is probably the scariest ghost that used to be down there because unlike all other ghosts, Isabel could leave the confines of the castle. I was down there with a few friends and we saw the ghost of a child inside the main building right at the top. There is only the shell of that building left, so we knew no one could go up there. One of my friends must have upset her due to messing about before we saw her because we all went icy cold, and while walking back up to the car, we all felt her following us. We got into the car, which also went icy cold. We got back to my place and went inside, which also went icy cold. She stayed with us for a couple of hours before leaving again. She made her point very clear, and I never invited that friend down again.
Yeah, it's a cool place. It's a creepy place. Do you remember when we were leaving? So there's a guy in the ticket office, and I think you brought up, like you do everywhere we go, you brought up that I'm too much of a wimp to ask. I don't want to find it embarrassing. But
Which I don't know why you do,
I don't
because
know.
every time I mention it, they're like, "Oh, it's so cool!"
Oh,
and
can you tell me some ghost stories, please, sir?
you sound like Dobby from Harry Potter. Then
No, of course I love it. I got a podcast about it, but
you're just not as forthcoming with
I
chatting to
just feel a bit
strangers
shy.
like I am.
Yeah, I just feel a bit shy doing it. But yeah, so you asked him. I think I was outside at that point, and it's often the way. You're often leading
Excuse
the way.
me, man.
Yeah, you're often leading the way,
Man.
asking about the ghost stories, and then I pop in. I'm like, oh, here she goes again. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it. And so yeah, you were asking him about his thoughts on the ghost stories of Barry Pomeroy, and
I always
if
think
he'd seen anything.
Well, yeah, I always think people that work there and that they're there opening, closing. Surely they may have seen something.
Yeah, most of the time, people you ask, they're very forthcoming and like to tell stories or things, the staff have seen or people they know have seen, etc. But this guy was just like, no, ghosts ain't real.
Proper skeptic, wasn't he? Proper
Yeah.
telling us why people even make up ghost stories.
Yeah, it's quite cool actually. I'd never.
It does make sense.
Yeah, I'd never thought about what he was saying until that point. So he basically said,
Goes back from Shakespeare.
Yeah, it goes back to like some of the original novelists, and he basically said that these buildings, these castles and stuff, often had writers, or these big rich, well-off buildings. They had writers and stuff, often frequenting, coming and going and stuff. And around the time that travel became accessible to the general public, these ghost stories started coming up in literature. So, yeah, these stories were written by writers at that castle at that time, essentially in what his opinion was. I'm sure it's been documented elsewhere, but he was of the opinion that these novelists write these stories so the general public, which it works, people like me
Would go visit. Sorry,
the only reason we went to visit that place is because it's allegedly one of the most haunted places in the UK, and that's generally the reason I go to most of these places. Don't get me wrong, I love the history and they're cool to look at and just roam around. But I do love the ghost stories of these places. So yeah, maybe he is right.
Yeah, how I understood it was he said that from Shakespearean times, when Shakespeare would write stories, when people could travel, they would go visit those places where the stories were based. And people sort of cottoned on and think, okay, I can make a few bucks here. If a story is based here, people will come and visit it. So they started making up stories to attract public and make some money. And it makes sense. But
it does make sense, yeah. But then at the same time, he's obviously very skeptical or complete skeptical. He has zero belief in anything paranormal. But at the same time, from a personal perspective, I've had so many things happen to me that I can't deny that there must be something. I think most of the time, 99% of the time, there probably is a reasonable explanation as to why something may be happening. But there is that 1% where things happen that are just unexplainable. So, yeah.
Your ghost stories. Your ghost stories.
some pretty spooky stories down in Devon.
Yeah, it's a great place full of fascinating history. And
I'm sure lots more.
Yeah, we'll be back there in the summer. So,
yeah, August time. We can go check out some more spooky places.
Yeah,
if anyone lives down in Devon and knows of any haunted places, it'd be cool to hear from you. And if you've got any recommendations of places we can go.
Yeah, please do. Let us know in comments on social media at Your Ghost Stories, or send us an email at yourghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com, or send a message on the website, yourghoststoriespodcast.com.
And if you live down that way, Berry Pomeroy, like 10 minutes, if that, from Totnes, and you've never been, go check it out. I highly recommend it. My stepmom's lived there her whole life, down in Devon, Torquay, and that was the first time she had been with us just after Christmas.
Yeah, it's a lovely place. It's very scenic, and yeah, even if you have to do an hour or 2 hour drive, it's well worth the drive. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, and it's been fun having Sammy on yet another episode. Let us know if you're enjoying Sammy, or if we should never ever get her on ever again.
That's mean. That's really mean. I'd rather not know.
Okay, I'll keep it a secret. Just send me a message privately. She doesn't have access to any of the pages, so yeah, just send us a message and I won't tell her.